Welcome to Rhythms That Restore. I'm your friend Charisse that's ready to journey beside you. Let's learn rhythms that can restore our minds, hearts, bodies, and spirits, and allow us to walk confidently in who God has called us to be. Are you ready? Pull up a chair. Let's get started. Hello, my friend. I am so glad to see you. I'm so glad to be here with you. If you're listening on the podcast or if you're watching on YouTube, welcome. Welcome to the Rhythms That Restore. I have missed sitting at this table with you so very much. I have truly just been longing for this day. My heart is so glad to be here with y'all, sharing what has been on my heart, what has been going on in my soul since we last gathered here with our warm mugs in our hands, all cozied up together. I'm basically just pretending like we're all sitting around the fire with blankets on our laps, coffee in our hand. When I know the reality is we're probably driving in your car, or you're walking around with your earbuds in, or maybe sitting at your desk. Regardless of where you are physically, we can all mentally be around the fire together. So for the last year and a half, Psalm 1:3 has been like a beacon to me, a firmly planted truth that I have let take root. And I wanted to begin our time with it. I kind of adapted it a little bit. She is like a tree planted by streams of living water, yielding its fruit in season, whose leaf does not wither, and who prospers in all she does. There's just something about trees that keeps speaking to me. I remember in maybe one of my very first spiritual direction sessions, learning how to make space and learning how to let my soul settle. My memory floated back to being in my backyard. I was probably 8 or 10 years old, gathering friends in one of our favorite trees to talk. We'd have neighborhood meetings in the trees. We each had our favorite little branch that we'd all sit at every time we met. And that's where we'd hang out. We'd call meetings and we'd say, meet in the trees. We had another favorite tree with apple blossoms, and we'd jump up and down, my best friend and I, and we'd make it snow, as we said. We were shouting at the top of our lungs, and we'd say, I don't know why we said this, it's raining in fairyland. We just thought it was so magical to be up in the trees, delighting in the trees, having fun, breathing in the oxygen. I think that the trees were our safe place to gather, to laugh, and to just delight in what God had around us. I remember at a daytime silent retreat years later, just sitting outside, staring at the trees, noticing how they sway back and forth in the wind. They just move with it. They're strong and they're life-giving. We need them for oxygen, for shade, for our homes, for paper. But all a tree needs to do is simply be itself. It fully relies on the Lord, and He uses it for His glory and for us. I felt that gentle invitation. That was probably 5 years ago, and it continually keeps coming back to me. But this spring, as our Bible study was coming to a close, we sat in silence the way that we always do at the end of our study to make space to listen for what God was wanting to do in and through us. And I found myself watching the trees again, just sitting, taking it in and marveling at what a tree is. And the more I sat, the more one word came to mind. And it just made me laugh. It tickled me. Nothing. I started thinking about how much I love gathering people together and how funny it would be to gather my girlfriends for a night of nothing. And I imagine calling a girlfriend and saying, hey, you are invited to come and do nothing with me. Or I just thought it was so funny. You are invited to nothing. I don't know why that made me laugh so much. I laughed the more that I thought about it, and it has stayed with me over the last few months. But how many of us have souls that are craving that space of nothing, that just need room to breathe, space to think, a place to show up and be allowed to do nothing? I carried that thought with me until July, until like the beginning of July. And I want to pause here for a second because I don't want this story to sound like something that it isn't. I was first introduced to the daytime silent retreats back in 2021, almost like 6 years ago now. And the first one was about 3-hour block of time. And if you're curious of how completely uncomfortable that was for me and how real the struggle was, you guys go back and listen to my very first episode on the podcast, episode 1, where I share all about the struggle that it was. 6 years. That is how long I have been learning to let my soul settle. 6 years since a friend asked. Actually, it's probably been 14 years since I had a good friend ask if I had margin in my calendar. And I said to her, I don't actually know what that word is. I was so embarrassed. I'm like, what do you mean margin? What do you mean? I didn't even know what the word meant, y'all. Oh, talk about God really needing to get a hold of me. And what I'm finding is that every time I make space, every time I create room for silence, a tiny place in my heart grows. Right? That tiny little space that's craving that margin so much, that's craving that space for nothing, it grows a little bit bigger and it grows a little bit bigger. And when I leave that space, my heart says, that was incredible. I want more. I want more of that. Right? So in July, I bravely said yes to a 3-day silent retreat. That my friend Allison led. She's a spiritual director, and she's actually my spiritual director cohort teacher right now. Y'all know her, Allison Bradsher. I didn't ask who else was attending. I didn't ask for any other details. I just signed up and showed up, curious about what the Lord would reveal in those 3 days. I carried a really, really big question with me, one I'd been carrying for months. One my spiritual director, Ann Wilson, had shared with me and asked me to sit with all summer. And I was watching for how and where God would show up and speak once my soul finally got quiet enough to listen. And what I found completely caught me off guard. I rolled my bags into my room, and as I did, I noticed directly in front of my window, y'all, this beautiful tree in front of my room. What? No one else's room had a tree. I looked, no one else, just my room right there, front and center, tree planted by the water. I'm not making this up, y'all. There was a tree planted by the water. I walked up to the window and I smiled. I took a picture and I said, thank you, Lord, for seeing me in this step of obedience that feels so uncomfortable and brave. Then after that, I walked down to the dining room and was handed a tray of food that I had not grocery shopped for, planned, or prepared. That alone, my friends, felt like a gift. I sat at the table with people that I'd never met, and we talked. We talked about how they'd arrived and what they were hoping for and listening for. And at one point, a woman looked at me and asked, do you have a podcast? I told her yes, but it had been over a year since I had recorded while I was working towards my spiritual direction certification. And she said, your face looks so familiar. I found your podcast online. And that's how I found Allison as my spiritual director. I live about 6 hours from here, and I'm so grateful you had her on your show and that we got to learn from her, and now we have her in our lives. My eyes immediately filled with tears. Immediately filled with tears. All the voices that had been very loud in my head over the past year of fear, of doubt, streamed down my face as she mentioned that. And I felt the Lord say, I see you, my daughter, and I can use you exactly as you are right here. You don't have to have it all together. You don't have to be perfectly healed before I can use you. It is in your brokenness, it is in your weakness, and it is in your imperfection that I am glorified. He said, I just need your brave yes. I just need your, here I am, Lord, step of obedience, and I'll do the rest. The rest of that retreat was absolutely lovely. The way that Allison planned it, the way the Lord used that time left me feeling simply held and loved. But here's what I noticed. It took me an entire day of being unplugged before my mind and my soul and my body could actually settle. Because I still brought notes to write and books to read and journals to fill. Y'all, I brought things to do. And by the second day, the Lord made my body so exhausted. The only thing I did was wake up, walk to breakfast, savor the food, sip the silence, and delight in the creation that was right in front of me. And then I walked back to my room and I fell asleep for another 2 hours. I woke up right before lunch, walked to the meal that I hadn't planned, cooked, or even thought about. I sat alone, staring out the window, watching the birds fly by, marveling at the trees, and watching a storm roll in. Just noticing the nothing that the birds and the trees were trying to accomplish. They trust their creator. They simply be. And in their being, they give God glory and fulfill their purpose. I walked back to my room, still overcome with exhaustion, and I fell asleep for another 2 hours. Y'all, what in the world? I don't know. I couldn't believe it. I woke up just in time for this amazingly sweet treat that Allison had waiting for us every day at 3:00. Nourishing smoothies. I walked down the hall in my socks and my cozy pants. I picked mine up, and as it went down, I thought, this is it. This is it, Lord. This is being held. This is being nourished. I crawled back in my bed and slept until dinner time. I don't even know. And God woke me up right before 6, and I did the same thing all over again. I arrived at the table simply to be held, loved, and nourished. That was all he was asking of me, to be held and to be loved. Even in my naps, even in my dreams, my mind kept drifting back to the times in my life that I felt the most held. I felt the most cared for, and I felt the most dearly loved. And those memories flooded in and took over, even while I was sleeping. It was one of the sweetest times I have ever experienced, and I never could have gotten there on my own and in my own home. Time and time again, when I make space for margin, when I create sacred space in my schedule, I see that God hasn't gone anywhere. He's always beside me. He's always with me. The thing is, my eyes get distracted and my ears can't hear for all of the noise around me. The busyness of life drowns out the beauty that's right in front of me. I'm learning that the rhythm of rest in my daily life bears fruit I've been searching for in so many other ways. Freedom. Of course, it's just like Jesus's paradoxical world. When we release, we gain. When we simplify, we find more. And when we learn to let go of filling, we find. And now that I'm home, I came back from that retreat still holding on to something slower, something quieter. And almost immediately, life started asking me to speed back up. And it's August, my friends. Football schedules, school is starting, lessons and practices are stacking up on my calendar for my kids. My own cohort is starting back. Books I said I'd read, a marriage, friendships, and my own health are all still needing me. It's all still there, waiting. And I found myself wondering, can remain survive a season like this one? I'm going to say that again. Can remain survive a season like this one? Because it's one thing to remain with Jesus in a quiet room with a tree outside your window. It's another thing entirely in the middle of carpools and a full inbox or a calendar with no white space left on it. So that's the real question that I'm carrying into this season, and maybe into an ordinary Tuesday alongside of you. What does remaining with Jesus actually look like when life is full? In carpool, at my desk, around the dinner table, in hard conversations, in friendship, in grief, in uncertainty, when I don't know what's next. Those are the questions that I'm carrying into this season. Maybe you're carrying some of them too. So what this new season will be, those are some of the questions and conversations I want to have here on Rhythms that Restore. Conversations about uncertainty, about grief, and giving ourselves permission to be fully human in the presence of God. About friendship, community, rest, presence, becoming, and the people that God uses to quietly form our lives. Some weeks, I'll sit here with you by myself, sharing something I'm noticing or a question I'm carrying. Other weeks, I'll pull up a chair for you. Next week, I'm sitting down with my friend and teacher, Allison Bradsher, and we get into something I think a lot of us quietly carry, the belief that faith is supposed to mean having fewer questions. Allison helped me to see that differently, that our questions aren't always problems to solve. Sometimes they're portals, an invitation into more of God, not less. But I don't want to come back to this microphone as the person with all the answers. I want to come back curious, listening, paying attention, learning how to remain. And maybe we can practice this together. So I don't have 5 things for you to do at the end of this first episode back. That would probably defeat the point. But I do have a question, one that I'm asking myself too. What if you didn't have to do anything today to earn God's attention or his love? What if, just for a moment, you could simply receive it? Maybe there's something in your own ordinary life where God is whispering the same invitation that he's been whispering to me. Remain. Be here. Let me love you. And maybe that's enough for today. I'm really glad to be back, my friends. Really glad. And I'm so grateful that you're here with me. I'll meet you here next time. Thank you for joining me on this journey of restoration and renewal. Remember, you can stay connected with me between episodes by following me on Instagram. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to ensure you never miss an episode. And if you found value in our conversation today, I'd truly appreciate it if you'd leave a review on your favorite podcast platform or share the show with a friend who might benefit from these rhythms. Until next time, may you find peace in knowing that you can show up every day simply as you are. And that is enough. Take care.